In this screencast, we will show you how to integrate JFrog Artifactory with Jenkins using the Artifactory Jenkins plugin. In any continuous integration environment, the build server serves as a single source of truth, generating unique information, not available on any other time, in any other place. Using the Artifactory Jenkins plugin will ensure saving this critical information in the system of record, your binary repository. Let's start by installing the Artifactory plugin. It is available in the Jenkins plugin manager. With the Jenkins plugins explosion, the easiest way to find a plugin is the search. After the plugin has been downloaded and installed, we need to configure Artifactory Server in the Jenkins system configuration. In the Artifactory section, we'll add a new server. We'll also provide the default credentials. They are overridable per build job. It's always a good idea to test the connection. Now we can create a new job. In this screencast, we'll demonstrate a Maven job. Please note that thanks to the universal nature of Artifactory, the functionality we are about to show is also available for Gradle and Ivy, and partially available for any other type of job, even for custom builds with make scripts and alike. In this screencast, we are going to build the JFrog's Maven project example. It's a part of JFrog Dev repository, which contains a lot of example projects, code samples, usable scripts, etc. After setting up Git connection, we'll configure Artifactory specific features. First, let's turn on release management. We're going to be talking about this feature a little bit later. Remember to check Resolve Artifacts from Artifactory checkbox and select the appropriate virtual repositories for releases and snapshots resolution. It is very important to guarantee that the CI server builds only retrieve artifacts from your trusted repositories. By using this checkbox, you can be sure that no other repository sneaked into the build resolution process. Next, we'll instruct Jenkins to run the Maven install command. Although the goal is to deploy the artifacts to Artifactory, we'll use the plugin deployment capabilities instead of relying on Maven, mainly because of two reasons. First, Maven deploys files after building each and every module. If one of the modules in the reactor fails to build, other already deployed modules will pollute the repository as artifacts, not related to any successful build. Artifactory plugins deploy all the modules only in the end of a successful build. Second, Artifactory plugin leverages the checksum-based upload feature, uploading files only if they are new. Next, let's configure the post-build action of deploying artifacts to Artifactory. We'll select the target repositories for release and snapshot artifacts. As you can see, clicking on Set a Different Value allows providing a runtime generated repository name, that is, take it from an environment variable during the build. The Deploying Artifacts checkbox is selected by default. Also note the Capture and Publish Build Info checkbox. We refer to it as build info to the unique information captured by the plugin in the CI server and published to Artifactory along with build artifacts. Usually, it's also a good idea to include the environment variables in the published information. This can help a great deal in troubleshooting misbehaving builds. Another very powerful feature is the Artifactory license checks. The plugin will analyze the artifact's descriptors, such as POM XML and IV XML files, and extract license information from them. This information becomes a part of the build info. Optionally, a report on license violations can be sent by email as well. Now, let's run the build. As you can see, all the dependencies are downloaded from Artifactory. Only in the end of the build, once all the modules were successfully built, all the artifacts are uploaded to Artifactory. Note the deploying build descriptor message. That's the build info being published as well. Artifactory plugin adds a convenient link from Jenkins to Artifactory build results page. As you can see, we are now in the build browser of Artifactory. Build Browser introduces a new level of abstractions on top of single artifacts. All the artifacts and dependencies, which are part of the same build, can be viewed, analyzed, and manipulated together by referencing to their common build name and number, disregarding their own names and versions. Here, we are now looking at the build number 1 of our Maven example project. In the general information, you can see when it was built, how long it took, and who was the user that built it. Generally, in the build browser, you'll see the list of all your builds, build runs by their numbers, with the links to the results page of every build in Jenkins. Back to our Maven example, build number 1. Except of the general information, we can see the breakdown by Maven modules. The summary includes number of build artifacts and number of dependencies. Drilling down into a specific module shows the artifacts and dependencies in a filterable tables. Common operations on the table rows include downloading the artifacts and navigating to the artifact in the tree browser. As expected, the artifact is in the lib snapshot local repository. Note the Builds tab. Every artifact that participated in the build remembers this information. You can see the builds that this artifact was created by or used as dependency in. Clicking on the build name will take you to the run. Clicking on the build number to the build details. Let's explore the additional tabs in the build browser. For example, the Environment tab. Here you can see the real-time environment variables, as they were recorded during the build in Jenkins. This information can be critical in troubleshooting. For example, we can filter the table to see the Java version. Another very important aspect of modern development is the usage of open source libraries and management of their licenses. Artifactory analyzes the licenses of Java and Nugget packages and displays the information under the Licenses tab. Licenses are configured in the Admin screen. They are recognized by a regular expression pattern matching and can be either approved or unapproved. Back to our license management screen. Note that you can export the report comma-separated value format to be presented to other stakeholders. Also, you can run the discovery process, which will analyze the descriptors and find the license entries to be matched against the licenses database. The table, as usual, is filterable and can be grouped by various columns. Looking at the build info JSON file exposes the low-level medium which used to transfer the information between Jenkins and Artifactory. Remember the deploying build descriptor message? This is the descriptor. It contains all the information that we just saw in a machine consumable, scriptable format, and it's available via REST API. Now, let's go back to Jenkins and run another build. This time, it's much faster. Not only because the dependencies are already cached, but since we didn't change any code, the jar should remain the same and shouldn't be uploaded to Artifactory, thanks to the checksums checks the plugin performs during the upload. Let's check if it's true. Build Browser has the feature of comparing between two builds. As you can see, most of the artifacts remain unchanged. They appear as two different snapshots. But thanks to the checksums based storage, stored only once on the file system. The dependencies weren't updated as well. There are some changes in the environment variables, since Jenkins sets new values to some of them based on the build. The build diff is also a very useful tool on troubleshooting misbehaving builds, answering a very tough question: what changed? Now, let's go back to the tree browser to talk about another very important aspect, the attached properties. As we mentioned, every artifact remembers the build it was created by. This is done by attaching properties to artifacts. This metadata is extremely important. It allows to make smart decisions about artifacts based on the information other than its name. Here, for example, we have a jar with a not very descriptive name, and even less descriptive version. Nevertheless, by going to the Properties tab, we can reveal that it was built by Maven example build number 2. We can also see when it happened, and which git commit triggered the build. Even more important, this information is searchable. We can use the artifact query language from the REST API, or the properties search in the UI to find, for example, all the items being created by Maven example builds. Or particularly build number 2. Another example of the build information power is the ability to automatically download all the artifacts, and optionally, all the dependencies of a certain build as an archive. Here is the documentation of this REST command. As instructed, we'll ask for the artifacts from our Maven example, build number 2, in a zip format. As you can see, all the artifacts were downloaded automatically. Now, let's talk about releasing your software. Once you're satisfied with the quality of your snapshots, it's time to build a staging build that might or might not end up in the production repository. Artifactory Jenkins plugin can help you dealing with removing the snapshot suffixes from version numbers across the project and manage your version control release tagging and branching. As you can see, in the release staging page, the plugin tries to guess the desired release version, the next development version, tag, and branch names, and even pre-populates the commit messages, as was configured in the job configuration screen. We'll stage our artifacts to the lib staging local repository and add a comment that we'll later see in the Release History tab of the Build browser. In the log, you can see the release staging at work. After the successful Maven job, the release POM files are committed to the release branch and tagged. The versions are changed again and committed to the master. Let's look at our stage build in Artifactory. As you can see, the versions of the modules aren't snapshots anymore. The artifacts have the release versions. And they are deployed to the lib staging local repository. Now, let's go back to the build. And from there, back to Jenkins. Let's assume that this stage build is a good release candidate and was approved for the release. Using the Artifactory release promotion link, we can release or roll back our build. In our case, we decided to release it. Obviously, the lib's release local is the repository to move our build to. Please note how we operate build abstractions again, instead of dealing with separate artifacts. We don't know and don't mind which exact artifacts are going to be moved to the release repository. We just need to promote the entire build. The promotion was almost immediate. In fact, no files were moved or copied on the file system. That's thanks to Artifactory checksums-based storage. Let's look at the release history in Artifactory. Here you can see both stages of the promotion, the staging and the release. This pipeline and its stages are totally configurable. You can execute any number of promotion steps per build. with custom stages and even custom logic performed during each stage by using REST API and Artifactory user plugins. Lastly, let's verify that our artifacts are now accessible from the right repository. Indeed, our build is now in the libs release local repository. That concludes our Artifactory Jenkins integration screencast. There is more to it. You can use JFrog Artifactory to run Java builds with Maven, Gradle, Ivy, and Ant, and work with packaging systems of other development platforms, like NuGet, Ruby Gems, or NPM. Artifactory also offers tight integration with Jenkins, Hudson, TeamCity, Bamboo, or any other CI server. Artifactory is also a great artifact repository for your DevOps needs, since it natively supports managing Docker images, Vagrant images, as well as RPM and Debian packaging managers. You are welcome to visit our user guide to discover more features and our YouTube channel for additional screencasts.